All right. Welcome back to the Bat Flip podcast. This is episode 2. How you doing, Matt?
Doing pretty good. How about yourself?
Hey, I'm doing all right. Just another week living the life.
I hear you.
Hey, so on today's episode, we kind of want to kind of just go over the past week, how the standings are looking. We got some big topics. Cespedes opting out. We got some injuries, some rule changes, players of the week, and sort of what happened today as we recorded this on 8/9. What happened between the Astros and the A's.
Oh boy. Ready to get into it.
Alrighty, well, let's get into it. Let's start with the standings recap and kind of what we've seen over the last week of how teams have been doing.
Yeah, so the AL East, we'll start out looking at like the Yankees are the team to beat there, of course. The Rays have had a pretty good week, or end of the week with a good series against the Yankees after struggling for a while. The Orioles are still hanging in there and tied for second place with the Rays, 7-7. Then the Red Sox has been a struggle so far, and the Blue Jays had a have had a struggle, um, all year so far, 5-8. They're
Yeah,
still kind of there. Nobody's out of it in the AL East yet, so that's
yeah, and
that's
they all
good.
had really mediocre weeks. I mean, three of them went 5-5 in their last 10, and the Rays and Blue Jays went 4-6 in their last 10. So they're all pretty
Yeah,
much right about the same, playing close to 500 baseball.
yep, and it's disappointing for the Yankees after their series against the Red Sox this past weekend. For to go 5-5 in their last 10. I mean, they haven't had a great week, and so that's been a little rough for them, and especially against the division opponent like the Rays. So
Yeah. So let's move on to the AL Central. With the Twins and the Tigers, I mean, they're both 6-4 this week, and the Tigers have been a really surprise. I mean, look, they're 8-5,
yeah,
a half game back.
Tigers have been interesting. They've got, they're not going to stay there, but they've had a good start to the season. I saw Spencer Turnbull put in a great outing today, 7 innings. I believe he's 7 innings, a shutout ball. And then the Twins are the class of that division. And don't sleep on the Indians completely. The Indians have a couple of really good pitchers, Mike Clevenger, and obviously Shane Bieber has been incredible so far this year. But their lineup's a little bit better than you think. They still got a Jose Ramirez who's been, back to his old self so far this year, and Francisco Lindor um, and Carlos Santana's been pretty good too. So they've got a few different guys that have had good starts, and um, their outfield's a little bit of a weakness, but we'll see with the Indians that you can't forget about them. They were in the World Series just a few years ago, so and
Oh
they're
yeah, yeah,
only
yeah.
one game back.
No,
They
and
got
you
talent.
got to give a shout out to Cookie Carrasco as well. I mean, he's coming
Oh,
back and he's looking really good
absolutely,
still as well.
absolutely.
And hey,
He's
the
doing
Tigers could
great.
stick around if they keep getting those 9 straight Ks from Tyler Alexander, setting an
Oh
AL
my,
record for
oh
that.
my gosh, that's crazy. So
The topping out at like what 91 miles an hour on
yeah,
his fastball, and
hey,
who says you have to throw 100 to strike
yeah,
people out these days?
you locate good and you have good breaking stuff. I mean,
That's all you
it's
need.
absolutely.
I mean, the White Sox had a really good week at 7-3. Luis Robert has looked like he's Mike Trout reincarnated,
Yeah, he's been
pretty much.
incredible.
The Royals, I mean, they're at the basement, pretty much what we expected. So not
Yeah,
much.
they've. Hey, a shout out to the Royals real quick though. They've got some good young pitchers. Sh- uh, the guy from Florida, Brady Singer,
Yeah,
and that a guy Bubik maybe is his name. Um, he pitched the other day really well against the Cubs, and I kind of followed that game a little bit. I think the Cubs ended up winning that game, but he pitched a really nice game. They got some good young pitchers, and they've got guys coming up too, like
yeah.
Jackson Kowar, and they've got another lefty. His name's I'm drawing a blank on his name. That's coming up as well, but they've got some good talent there that's getting ready.
It's just gonna take about a couple years to get that
Oh
in.
yeah,
They're in that
for sure,
rebuild process, so we'll hit that.
for sure.
Oakland, I mean, Oakland's had a really good week. They're 9-1 in their last 10.
Yeah, they've been great. They've got their best record in the AL, 12-4.
The best record
They've
in the league, isn't it?
I'm
Yeah,
not 100% sure, but it might
yeah.
be.
They're 12-4.
Yeah.
Colorado's 11-4. So
Okay. Yeah, and I think Colorado lost. I don't think Colorado's finished today. Maybe they have. I'm not sure, but the A's are doing great. Their pitching's been keeping up, and I mean they've got good players all over the field with um, their lineup. Great defensive team too. That's so important.
Yeah.
Such a
I
great
mean,
defensive team.
who would have thought this? What are we 20? Not even 20 games into the season, and they already have a 5 game lead in their division.
Yeah.
Um,
And of
you
course,
know,
they've,
with
smoking the Astros this weekend has been big for them too, because
we'll
that's their big competition there.
yeah, we'll hit on that series a little bit later on in the show for you guys. But
Yep.
the rest of the division's been really underwhelming. Texas at 5-5,
Yeah.
Seattle at 3-7, and Anaheim at 3-7.
Yeah, the Angels, they had been missing Mike Trout for a few games with the birth of his son. He's come back and played well, but the Angels haven't. I mean, Anthony Rendon hasn't quite been himself. Otani hasn't hit that well so far. We'll touch on him a little bit later on the with his pitching injury. But the Angels pitching is not really there either, and that's not good for them. Um, the Mariners, they've been all right. They've had some ups and downs. They're a rebuilding team. They've had some players that have looked pretty good and look to be developing, so that's good for them. The Rangers, obviously they had lost Corey Kluber, in their first game of the season, or his first start for their team, and I mean, they've got some good pieces, but they're just not a complete team yet. So the A's look to be the class of that division right now, and they're going to be tough to catch. I mean, we're 10 days into, or nine days into August, and I mean we've only got a month and 20 days left in the season. So in the regular season, so the A's, I mean, at 5 games in that amount of time, that's not that much time. That's not that many games. So um, somebody's going to have to step up and chase it down. Of course, they have a lot of games. Everyone's got a lot of games against their division. So still, that's going to be it's going to make some of these chases a lot easier to come back, make big comebacks in.
Yeah. So we'll jump over to the National League now and kind of just blow through this. The Marlins are still playing like the 2017 Houston Astros right here.
Yeah.
No, they're doing really well still, holding in there. We don't know how long this is going to go. They don't really have the team that's going to keep up with Atlanta or anything. But I mean, 7-3 in their last 10.
Yeah, they've lost two in a row to the Mets this weekend, and that's been. I think the magic might be starting to fade just a little bit, but good for the Marlins. It's good that they're playing um, after having all those players out with COVID and missing a week, and to be able to come back. And I mean, they swept the Orioles. Um, obviously it's the Orioles, but still, for that team to beat anybody with the circumstances is incredible. So good for them. Then I think the Braves are probably still the class of that division, even without with the injury to Soroka, which we'll talk about in a little bit as well. The Mets are playing a little bit better. They've got their struggles, but they, you know, they've got to figure some things out. But they're still in it. The Phillies and Nationals. Nationals are missing Soto, or have missed Soto for most of the year, but they have had a rough go of it with their pitching and their pitching
Yeah,
injuries.
Strasburg did not look good
He
today
did
at
not play. He did
all.
not pitch well. He gave up
Um,
5 runs, and
and then
um,
and Max Scherzer,
and
going down with his little injury.
yes, and
Doesn't look like it'll be too long term though, so he should be back
yeah,
pretty soon. But when you're relying on Anibal Sanchez and Patrick Corbin as your top
yeah,
two starters
Austin
right now,
Voth,
that's just not who
Eric
you really want
Fede.
to
I
see.
mean, no offense to them, because a couple of them have some talent, like Roth and Fede. I mean, but they're not big time players at all. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done there.
Yeah, and jump back up to the Phillies. I think I saw today they have the second worst bullpen ERA in the major leagues right now. I think behind the Royals. So
Yeah, and the
that's not
Phillies
very
just
great.
yeah, it's not that's not good at all. And bullpen's extremely important, especially with one of the rule changes we're going to discuss later. But I mean, the Phillies have put so much investment into their lineup and investment into their starting pitching that hasn't really worked out at times. Um, they've neglected their bullpen, and when you neglect your bullpen and then you add on a couple injuries, guys that were really good when you signed them but have been banged up and have come back and got banged up again and are not themselves, like David Robertson. You just don't know how it's going to end up working out. So, um, but I mean, they're still a talented team. They got a good lineup. They're only everyone in the East is within 4 games. So I mean, anything can happen. Short season. So
Yeah, and then we got the Cubs went 8-2 this last week. I don't know how with the way their bullpen is stacked up. And,
golly,
Brewers 5-5, Reds 5-5, which I would expect better from the Reds the way that Sonny Gray and Trevor Bauer have been pitching, but I guess everybody else has kind of been kind of letting them down. The Cardinals just had their entire weekend postponed, and just today they announced that their series against the Pirates this beginning of the week is postponed or canceled as well. So, I think the Pirates are going to be happy to not be playing those games with
the
after
Pirates
going
are
1-9 in their last 10 and 3-13 overall.
yeah, the Pirates are a disaster. Um,
Yeah, I mean, just
so
they're jumping into that whole rebuilding phase as well. They got a lot
yeah,
of people that are either banged up or just not playing, up to par
yeah,
what they really need to. Josh Bell's really taken a step back this year after what
yeah,
he did last year.
yeah,
But we're in that weird spot where we have a lot of those rebuilding teams just kind of kicking it off, the Royals and the Pirates and stuff, Tigers, Orioles. So they're
yeah,
going to be at the bottom for quite a while, but hopefully they can not keep this going on for too long.
yeah. They'll get
Um,
things figured out. I was overviewing some of the farm systems the other day. And, I mean, I thought that the Royals had done just wonders for their farm system in the last, year or two, and the Orioles had done a good job as well, building theirs because they were both in really bad shape, and as well as the Mariners. The Pirates still have some good players down there, and they've of course they're a little bit newer into their rebuild, but
yeah,
they've made some trades in the past few years that have really hindered their future while not really being able to go for it in those
Chris
specific
Archer.
years. Exactly. Chris Archer.
But and then we'll jump to the just kind of the last one and get through this one real quick. The Rockies and the Dodgers, they're both 7-3 in their last 10, and they've both been playing really good baseball. Really, um, it's gonna be that division is gonna be a dogfight, I think, between those two.
Yeah, and the Padres are sitting there at 9-7. They're not far behind. They've got some pieces that have been looking really good. So, they're Fernando Tatis obviously, but they've also had some other guys that have stepped up and played well. They had that first baseman that came up this week and hit a couple homers, and trying to recall his name as well. But they're
Jake Cronenworth.
yes, Cronenworth. Yep.
Yeah,
Um, they got talent. They got a lot of talent. Tommy Pham's a good veteran player who's
yeah.
been on a lot of good teams. They've got a lot of pieces there. So
And then the Giants and Diamondbacks just kind of wrap it up, where they're both 4-6 in their last 10.
yeah, the
Arizona we expected to
Diamondbacks.
be a lot better, but Bumgarner has not looked good at
Yeah, it's not.
all.
Yeah,
Um,
Bumgarner's been bad.
I saw a
So
thing after he got shelled today against San Diego. They said the team doctors are going to look into his shoulder slash elbow area. So
yeah,
we'll see what that turns out to be, and we'll update you guys for sure on what the status of Mad Bum is going forward next week.
yeah,
Um, so that's kind of the overview of the standings. We want to kind of have that be a thing where we're starting off with every week, and just kind of give you guys a rundown of how the league is as an overview. Um, let's jump into this whole UNS Cespedes situation, which it really happened this last week after we had already recorded our episode.
mhm.
But with Cespedes, he just supposedly he up and just packed all his stuff in the hotel, left the team on the road, told his agent to tell the Mets that he was opting out of the 2020 season due to COVID concerns after coming back, and just left them high and dry, supposedly, with them not knowing anything. And they make a little minor deal to try and help that outfield depth by getting Billy Hamilton.
Yeah. I mean, I thought it was crazy that nobody knew where he was. I mean, the Mets. He were in Atlanta and he was in his hotel. And the Mets sent security to his hotel because he didn't report to the ballpark. They couldn't contact him and he wasn't there. So there were a lot of people who were concerned that his safety was in danger, which obviously it wasn't. But he just decided to leave. I don't know. The Mets really were struggling, and I guess that maybe he was just. saying it's not worth this risk. I don't think he's come out to the media and said anything about it, except for that I told my agent to tell him, basically. Um, but that's rough. And Ennis Cespedes is a guy that last year, or last year he didn't play. The year before last, he had that. I don't think he played at all year before last. He might have played half the season year before last. But I mean, that's rough. And this is a guy that the Mets are really counting on in their lineup. So then Billy Hamilton's, he's a speed guy.
Nice depth
He's
piece. I
Yeah, I
mean,
mean, he's a pinch runner, a defensive replacement. He's not going to hit, and he hasn't hit before very well. And
yeah.
that's rough. It's really rough for the Mets though, because they were counting on. Everyone was talking about how deep their lineup was going to be, not
Well,
just
I
good,
mean,
but also a deep lineup.
this
And
year kind of it set up perfectly for Cespedes to come back because they were going to play him at DH most of the time and
absolutely.
really keep him off his field or off his feet in the field and just he could just focus on hitting and regain his health and everything. And he was actually not looking too bad. I mean, he had hit a couple home runs. Still obviously working off some rust from
Oh,
not playing in a
absolutely.
year and a half, but I mean, you could see signs of him really turning into the old Yoenis Cespedes that we know. That's very feared when he steps into the box. And I mean, it's a big blow for the Mets. I mean, if you would have got that guy going with their lineup and get Jacob Degrom and Stroman and Matz and them pitching really well, I mean, you could have made some noise. But I mean, now it's just kind of you know, what direction are they going in now?
Yeah, there's a lot of issues there, and I think Michael Waka went down yesterday as well, and he was a guy that they were counting on in their bullpen. I mean, in their starting rotation. I mean, they had Jacob Degrom. Obviously, has been spectacular as he always is, and they were counting on this year Stroman, Waka,
Yep.
Porcello. They're counting on some of these guys to have a good year. Steven Matz and Porcello's looked awful. Waka looked pretty bad, and then he got hurt, and Stroman has been hurt. So, it's kind of the same deal with the Mets as they've had for 3 or 4 years now, where ever since their World Series run in 2015,
Just
it's been
injuries, injuries,
pitching
injuries.
injuries and drama with
Yep.
their manager and their lineup. I mean, it's always something with them, and they're entertaining, that's for sure.
Yeah. So, kind of playing off the whole injuries thing, that allow us to move into some bigger injuries that we've had happen over this past week, which is it's kind of a sad thing for baseball that these main people are getting injured with. Shohei Ohtani. I mean, he's a big piece for baseball to market. Everybody looks forward to Ohtani Day
Yeah.
on the pitching side. And, fantastic hitter still, but say what you want. Seeing a guy who can get on the mound and do that as well, he's very exciting and polarizing. And to lose him for the year, I think it's a forearm strain. Is that what they said?
It was I don't remember it was something like that. I don't remember the specifics. Luckily, it's not a Tommy John surgery that he's going to have.
Right.
It's not a torn UCL, because that was the worry from on my end when I heard he was going down with an arm injury, potentially an elbow injury, was that his Tommy John, because he just got done rehabbing that.
Yeah, and
That
he hasn't. I mean, he did not look good at
he did
all this year. I
not.
mean, it's only been two starts, but from 2018, he was a guy who was averaging basically 97 on his fastball.
Yeah.
He was down 3 miles an hour to 94 this year. And same thing, if you look at all of his pitches across the board, all of them are about a 2 to 3 mile an hour drop. Um, and just not. I mean, even a couple of his spin rates on his pitches have gone down, which is
Yeah.
very concerning.
Yeah. Well, you also question, you know, how his rehab works. This because it's unusual for a guy to be in the lineup hitting every day. That's a
Yeah,
pitcher, and
especially in that being his
especially
extension arm.
exactly. So I don't, I'm not a doctor, and I don't want to speculate about anything, but it's kind of hard to it's kind of hard to say whether it's true or not, but it's possible that maybe the Tommy John, there's something there with swinging the bat every day that might have you know might have affected something in his recovery. I mean, I know that that's not something that's really thought to be the case in most of the time. Most, if you have a
Right.
catcher that has Tommy John or a shortstop that has Tommy John or something, a lot of times they can hit. and rehab it just fine. But we've never had a situation where we've had an all-star talent level pitcher like Otani also be an all-star talent level hitter and you
Right.
know and, and and try to hit every day while recovering from a injury like that. So it's hard to say, and I don't know too much about it. I've never had a Tommy John surgery or anything. So but it's that's something that's such a strenuous recovery for most pitchers that you wonder if that might have affected anything. But hopefully not, and hopefully this current injury is something that he will get over pretty quick. You know, they say, like I said, it's not another UCL injury. It's not going to be a Tommy John surgery, which is very,
And
very
he's still
good.
available to hit in their lineup, so that's a very good sign. Is that they're not shutting him down from hitting or anything. They said, you can run out there, you can hit all you want. It's not going to affect it anymore.
Yes. Yeah, so that's good
Um,
for them as well. I mean, you always want a guy like that to be able to stay on the field. But
yeah,
I think we were talking the other day. He's one injury away from maybe being an outfielder. So
yeah, or just a
that's
just a simple DH even.
Yeah, yeah, and
Um,
that sucks to think about. But hopefully his recovery goes well, and next year he'll be able to come back and be as strong a pitcher as we think he can
yeah.
be.
Speaking of hoping they come back and being as strong as pitcher as they can be next year, I know this one's going to hurt a lot for you being a Braves fan, but and it should hurt for a lot of baseball fans because this guy was a young, talented pitcher. Mike Soroka, I mean, what a horrible, horrible injury to blow out your Achilles, um, and especially on your push-off leg.
Yeah, I think that I think that the good news is it is his push off leg because a lot of times that injury is something that can be repaired fully. Um, and I think a lot of times pitchers will have an issue with trust on their plant leg, on their landing leg. Um, so that's something that's good that because I was hearing, Adam Wainwright reached out to him because Adam Wainwright dealt with that injury several years ago and was talking to him about it and the recovery ahead and everything and was talking about his lead leg, his plant leg, having it would be better or what was bad because that's what the leg that Wainwright had it on. So but Soroka obviously it's his right leg, which is I think it's supposedly better. It sucks to lose him. I hope they don't lose him for too long. You don't want to see, like you said, you don't want to see any guy on any team deal with that. But this guy's a young talent who's looked at times like he might end up being an ace in the big leagues. He's 22 years old, and he's in great shape. He works real hard on his physical condition, and that sucks. But the Angels, having to replace their injury is it's going to be difficult for them. But they're kind of, like we were talking about the standings, they're a little bit further back in the standings. Um, it'll be interesting to see if they make any moves. The Braves are the favorites in the National League East right now, and they lost their top pitcher, which is tough because their rotation already had a lot of question marks. So it'll be interesting to see if they make any kind of moves.
Well, we'll see what
Later in
kind of
the
moves there is to
later in the
make. I mean, we don't know what the even the landscape of that market's going to look like. I mean,
absolutely.
there's a lot of uncertainty about especially with the expanded playoffs. What's the deadline really going to be like? Are we going to see any real big names on the move? I mean, and even solid guys who are on short-term deals. Like, there's just not many of those out there, and teams are going to be more willing to try and go for it, especially with these expanded playoffs right now, than try and trade some controllable or not even controllable starters, just some solid innings eaters.
Yeah, I think in my opinion, and there's I don't have any like sources or anything behind this, but my opinion is that teams will want to go after controllable guys because they want a guy that, if this season ends up having an issue with COVID and getting shut down, or something weird happens because we've got this expanded playoffs, they want a guy that if they're going to put an investment into somebody trade prospects, they're going to want a guy that's going to be around next year too. So I think you're going to see it be a little bit tougher to trade guys on 1 year deals like in the past where you might have a rental, but in the it's going to be easier to trade a guy who is maybe got a couple years on their deal, or is a guy that's in arbitration or something, where you might be able to that might be a little bit more of a seller's market because got that a team might want to invest in. Okay, well we're good this year. Let's go ahead and get this guy that we might want to trade for in the off season, and so next year he's going to be in our plans. I think that
Yeah.
might be something you see a little bit more of, but I'm interested to see what will happen because I honestly have no idea, and we're sitting here 10 games into the season, 15 games into the season, and we are about 20 games from the trade deadline. So,
Yeah, we're only really about 3 weeks from tomorrow.
yeah,
Really, I
exactly.
mean, three
So,
weeks from tomorrow is that trade deadline. So it's definitely going to be an interesting and awkward one, but we'll see what really happens there.
absolutely.
Stanton went down today again with a or no, it was yesterday with a hamstring injury.
Yeah,
He
it's rough to
always
see.
has hamstring injuries. I hope this one is not as bad as some of his other ones because those have really hampered him in the past of just zapping his power and him just getting really off sync with his swing and just he when he comes back from those he always looks lost. And it was so refreshing and so good to finally see him get back into MVP Stanton form, hitting those home runs close to like how he hit 60 that one year pretty much. And it's a big blow for the Yankees as well because him and Judge were looking really good.
Yeah, that is going to hurt the Yankees. Because Stanton was playing really well so far this year, but um, that's something where Stanton's had this history for the last 3 or 4 years, so I can't say that I'm shocked. I mean, one thing that I kind of want to touch on as well and get your opinion on too, Damien, is that um, we have a lot of injuries so far this year because we've talked these few that we've talked about. Some that happened the first week, like Kluber, Stroman. And then this week, not only these that we've talked about, but you have like Scherzer with a minor injury that, he, you know, kind of messed up his hamstring a little bit, but it sounds like he's gonna be fine. Strasburg haven't been hurt. You know, you had you had Ozzy Albies go on the DL with or the IL with a little wrist problem. Um, you've got a lot of guys that have been getting banged up here early, all-star caliber players, and I'm hoping that it's not something to do with having a shortened spring training or summer camp, as they called it. But I want to hear what your opinion is on that. Do you think that that has anything to do with the shortened camp?
I really don't think it does. I think it's just kind of the way the injuries happen usually in a season. We always usually have quite a bit of bigger names still on the injury list. I mean, baseball is still a grind.
Oh yeah,
I don't really think it's anything. I mean, the people that you really see injured, I mean, outside of like Soroka, like Scherzer the past couple years, he's kind of shown some injury problems. Same things
yeah,
Otani and Stanton, and I mean, Stroman's usually a gamer, but I mean, he just suffered a little tear in his calf, so I don't think you can really. I don't know what that would have to
yeah,
do, with the shortened camp per se, because he was looking really good in camp until that happened. And he's always somebody that keeps up on his work and his fitness very, very well.
right,
Um, so I don't think it really has anything to do with the shortened camp. I just think it's more of the unfortunate events. Maybe it has to do with the COVID restrictions and players not really getting out there and stretching enough or doing enough workouts or anything to keep their body limber. I mean, maybe it's something to do with that, but I don't think it has anything to do with the shortened camps. I mean, if you're looking at like velo drops and stuff like that, I would say that more has to do with pitchers not being built up
right.
enough. But definitely not. I don't think the injuries are anything of summer camp.
Right, and I think managers, for the most part, have done a really good job of limiting starting pitchers' innings. I saw something yesterday or day before that this was the first time in big league history that at this point in the season, or I mean, obviously I think at any point in the season that starting pitchers averaged fewer than 5 innings per start. And that's something that we're seeing a lot of. I've seen a lot of pitchers getting pulled at 70, 75, 80 pitches, and I think that has a lot to do with that as well. Maybe trying to help
Yeah,
prevent some injury
I,
and
I think that
um,
has to do with the summer camp and the not much
yeah,
time to ramp back up. The Bueller's had a lot of that. Um,
yeah.
just from my personal side of games I'm able to watch. But kind of going into those shortened games and stuff, that kind of is a perfect segue into this new rule change that came down from Rob Manfred this week, and that is to make double headers this year 7 inning games instead of a full nine.
Yeah, that's interesting. And it's definitely something that strategically teams have maybe differed on. We had the Orioles and the Marlins. I think were the first ones playing that doubleheader um, this week, and it was interesting. The Braves and Phillies played two today because they had a rain out on Friday, and it's been the Tigers. I think have played a couple as well.
Tigers Reds played some.
Tigers Reds played some because of rainouts. So it's interesting because it, it's hard for to manage the pitching. What's going to happen? Because I think Trevor Bauer threw a complete game the other
Yeah, he
day.
threw a 7 inning shove.
So
I think he threw like 12 strikeouts or something.
it's really interesting how to balance your bullpen versus your starting pitching in those games. Because you could also pitch if you think about it. If you get a pitcher through 2 innings, and if you have a really strong bullpen, that's almost like getting your starter through 5 innings in
Yep.
a regular game. If you get a pitcher through 3 innings, so you really can manage that differently. And if you got a deep bullpen, you can almost make it a bullpen game without any penalty. But if on the other hand, if you've got a weak bullpen and you got a really good starter, someone like the Reds with Trevor Bauer the other day, and teams like maybe the Nationals as well could be another example with their pitching rotation. You might plan on a guy throwing a complete game, or maybe the Mets with Jacob DeGrom. If he starts one of those games, you're probably going to have a complete game. So I think it's interesting to see how teams manage that. From here on. I know the Braves today called up a AAA guy, Huascar Yanoa,
Yeah.
to start that game for the Soroka injury, and basically made it a bullpen game. And you've got all these teams like the Rays and the Padres have done in the past, and other teams as well with openers.
Hmm.
That's a perfect example of a time to use an opener where it doesn't penalize your bullpen at all.
Right.
So it's really interesting that rule change, and I do not like it for future seasons. I don't think it's something that I would like to see next year or either year after.
You know, I
But
I kind of thought the same thing, but I think it's kind of growing on me some more. Um, when doubleheader games, I mean, they're very, very hard on teams and players, really, um, to play at the top level, at the height of your talent and everything, and to do that for 18 innings in a game, I just or in a day, I mean, it's very hard. I've usually not been somebody that really likes what Manfred has done and everything, but I really do think that these 7 inning doubleheader games, it could be a thing that's here to stay, honestly. And I don't think I would be too objective to it. I mean, I do like 9 innings. I do like the game of baseball, but I think just from a team perspective and a player's perspective, I think the 7 innings might be a good thing for baseball.
yeah, I mean, I don't especially like it because it takes out a lot of it takes out a lot of the value of having a starter go deep into a game, or having a good bullpen. I think it's a lot fewer innings to cover for the pitching, so it really affects how you can manage that in a way that I don't think is great for the game in the future. Um, and of course, I think that on the point of you've got your players that are playing 18 innings in a day, or maybe more if a game goes extra innings. I definitely think that there's something that could be said for that, but you also have extra players for doubleheader games.
Yeah, but
So
you're only allowed one extra
so
player, and most of the time that's a pitcher. So
right, so
most
you could potentially expand that. Is kind of what I'm thinking, is maybe to expand your extra players if you've got a 28 man roster like we do right now, to maybe allow two extra players. You got 30, and then you've got probably six bench players. You got another bench player. So I think it's something interesting. There's definitely right now the 7 inning games are a big deal because I do 100% agree. You cannot have double headers 3 days in a row and not expect players to get either
Yeah.
fatigued or based on their being fatigued, injured.
Well, I think
So
it's like when I was watching the Phillies game, Phillies versus Braves earlier. I think they were saying that the Phillies have I think it's at one point it's like 11 games in 7 days or
exactly.
something with these double headers in there, and
Right. So you have to have
yeah,
shortened games for that,
yeah,
because there's no way you're going to have a team that covers 11
no,
9 inning games, so 99 innings in 7 days. So
that's just way
that's
too
that's a
much.
lot, yeah. So and those hitters with all those swings are gonna get fatigued, and having to
Hmm.
warm up for every game, playing defensively, especially, and then pitching
Catchers,
wise, yeah,
yeah,
your bullpen's still gonna get taxed at that point. So, um,
yeah,
and you're talking about possibly having to have starting pitchers throw. You're talking about 11 games in 7 days. You're talking about having you know your starting pitchers throw probably each of them throw twice in that 7 days. So um, you're going to want to limit them to, a 3 or 4 inning start and maybe like 50 or 60 pitches so they can come back on short rest. Um,
yeah,
so that's something where, and it's definitely better if it's within a series, I believe, too. Hopefully, we don't have many more of these, COVID postponements, because I think that's what really can put you in a bind with those.
yeah,
But
exactly.
rainouts are kind of the thing right now that I think that affects, because most teams aren't having the COVID issues.
Well, I mean,
There's
the
only
Phillies
two
are
teams
still
that
dealing
have.
with the COVID thing.
They are,
Um,
and the Cubs are going to deal with it a little bit. But most teams are losing 3 games from that they need to make up. But you've got two teams that are losing lots of games, like the Marlins. They're going to have to make
yeah,
up a lot of games. The Cardinals have only played 5 games as of right now. So
yeah,
other teams have played 15. They're going to have to make up like 10 games on everybody. So
yeah,
uh, or close enough to it for them to have a winning percentage that's comparable. So
yeah. It's gonna be really interesting to see how the league deals with that.
yes, for sure.
Um, and speaking of how the league is gonna deal with things, let's get into this brawl today against the
Right.
Astros and Ramon Laureano, pretty much from the Oakland A's. So pretty much the backstory is it's still the Astros 2020 Shame Tour, just with no fans. But the Astros had hit in this series alone Ramon Laureano. I think it was 3 times overall in the series, and twice today. And the second time, Laureano kind of took some offense to it, wanted to kind of say something to the pitcher, and obviously COVID reasons, they're all trying to keep everything, you know, distanced and avoid the benches clearing stuff. So the umpire's like walking him down, and they're all kind of trying to talk about it and what's going on. And Laureano gets to first base, and the I think it's the hitting coach or the assistant hitting
It's
coach,
one of the
Alex
hitting coaches,
Cintron.
yeah, Cintron.
He started mouthing off to Ramon Laureano at first base, and kind of just jabbing at each other, and started waving him over like, "Hey, if you want it, come on, get it." And Laureano's like, "Dude, go away," and he keeps saying something, and finally he said something. I don't know what it is. We'll have to wait for the John Boy breakdown to actually know what he said. Um, and pretty much Laureano just got fed up and started charging the dugout, and the hitting coach jumped behind 3 players
Yeah,
and had basically the players start going after Laureano, and it was a big benches clearing brawl. It kind of got sorted out pretty quickly, but if we saw 8 game suspensions and stuff like that for Joe Kelly and the Dodgers and Astros not even, really getting into a brawl, more of a just benches clearing and kind of conversation type deal, I cannot wait to see what the punishment is for this. For it was actually physical contact in
yeah.
this COVID
S-
era.
So, first off, I think it's pretty crazy that teams now, it's not rushing the mound anymore. It's
Fresh
rushing
in
the
the
entire
dugout.
damn dugout, and you got guys like Amir Garrett was the one that did it last year, and it's just, I think that's kind of crazy. But I mean, I think that, like we talked about last week with the Joe Kelly situation. I think that it's very important for Major League Baseball for this season to go on and to continue. These players probably don't have COVID, and there's probably nobody that's going to catch it from that, because most of them are healthy and have been tested a lot and everything. But I think the biggest thing is the optic of it. It's going to be really hard to deal with, and Major League Baseball has got to get it in these guys' heads. They've got to get it in these managers' heads to they're gonna have to crack down on it because you can't have a physical all out physical altercation like that. And it sucks that Laureano got hit, but I mean, and the Astros hitting coach is being a dummy by trying to instigate it. But you can't go charging into the dugout and trying to fight somebody right now. That doesn't matter if someone's trying to instigate it. Doesn't matter if you got hit by a pitch. You can't do it. So um, I would be angry if I was Laureano too. But um, I think that I think that hitting coach needs to be suspended because why is the hitting coach mouthing off at the players trying to start a brawl? And I do think that Ramon Laureano needs to have a couple games. And I don't see how you can't put a little bit on this on Dusty Baker too, because he is the manager, and this is the second time. Nobody else has had issues with this. We were talked about last week as well. The Reds manager going out there with or the Pirates manager going out there with putting a mask on before arguing. You got to think right now, and you got to. There's a lot of consequence to things like that are happening, and I think it's important for baseball to continue this year for that to be dealt with
Well, and
and punished.
the problem is the Astros think that they've done nothing wrong, and that they are completely fine with it, and that none of the players are getting any punishment for it, so they're fine. Their punishment was with the manager and the GM and just draft pick fines and stuff like this, but that's not realistic. If you look around the game of baseball, there are 29 other teams and 29 other teams of players on the field that personally feel cheated and feel a victim of the Astros stealing their signs and succeeding from it and not getting any discipline or anything from it. So to be sitting here and especially, I mean, I know this doesn't have anything to do with them, the Astros players getting hit, but to have Dusty Baker pretty much just come in and be like, well, we got our punishment and that's all, and we shouldn't need anything else. Like, Dusty, you just guys are just putting a target on your back even more now.
Yeah,
And when you have a hitting coach who has nothing to involve with the game at all, um, going on there and mouthing off to a player and stepping out of the dugout onto the field to jab at a player, that is very uncalled for. And I mean, to me personally, I think he should be suspended for the year. There's no need for that right now in the game, especially as short of a leash as the Houston Astros are
yeah.
already on from around the league's perspective. I just I don't. That's me. I think he should be gone for the season.
Yeah, I mean it's one of those things where you can't know for sure what was said, what the history is between maybe some of these specific players and whatever. Um, you know, I think that this probably didn't have too much to do with the whole sign stealing scandal, but I mean, yeah, I mean, the Astros they gotta clean up their act a little bit, and I think, like I say, it's got to start. Dusty Baker came in to. I understand him protecting his players because he's got to keep his clubhouse together. That's his job, but
Right.
it's what he's getting paid to do. But he's got to also keep them in check. So you can't have your pitcher out there hitting people. I don't know if he hit him on purpose. I know that there's some people who think he did. There's some people who think he didn't. But um, I think that you can't have in this COVID era, you can't have players charging. And I think if you're instigating it, especially as a coach, um, I think that that's a problem too. But
Yeah.
I think both of them should be in trouble for that. And I think this is the second problem. This is the second benches clearing issue that the Astros have had this year. So that should go for something where that's a problem because there's not. I don't think we've had another benches clearing altercation, especially one in which there's actual contact made, except for those two. So
No.
um, teams are being a lot of teams are being very careful with stuff like that. But this team, apparently is, you
And
know,
and to me, the
not.
Astros are already getting off easy this year as it is with no fans.
Well, yeah. I mean,
And all
they're
these
gonna have
rules.
fans. Next time they have fans, they'll get their,
Yeah,
they'll
I'm just
get their
saying so
booze in,
far this
and
year.
yeah. But
Um, so yeah, it's just. who knows with the way Manfred deals with it. What's probably going to happen is Laureano's probably going to get a 50-game suspension, and Centron will get a raise, knowing how Manfred works with things.
Yeah, I mean,
So
there's no telling with Manfred, but I do think that Manfred should give both guys a suspension for a couple games, and definitely give. I think Dusty Baker, you're gonna have to get it. I don't know if a suspension's necessary there because he's a respected guy and he's been around the sport for a long time, but you're gonna have to get it in his head that this cannot happen again,
well, he
and it should
got
have gotten in his
suspended.
head last time.
Yeah, he got suspended for his role with the Dodgers one. So you got to think he's for
No,
sure getting another suspension for
I
this.
thought I thought that was just Dave Roberts that got it from that one.
Did yeah, it was Dave Roberts. Huh? He got a Baker got a fine. That's right.
Okay, yeah. So
Um,
that's kind of the thing. Like you're gonna
so
have to
Bob
get it in his
Melvin
head somehow. But
is Bob Melvin going to get a suspension?
well, I mean, I don't know. I think the
That's what.
biggest issue there is that Bob Melvin, that was something where he had a player that got hit. His player didn't instigate anything until he charged the dugout. So it's not like a call where sometimes you'll have a manager that's supports a player going out and hitting somebody, whether they
Right.
should or shouldn't. But I don't think Melvin supported going charging the dugout. But I mean, yeah, there it's a one-time offense, so um, it's not like Dusty Baker. This has happened twice with the Astros,
Right.
but it's a one-time offense. So I think that maybe a one-game suspension, which I mean, the one-game suspension is not that much. I mean, he could have
Right.
got kicked out in the first inning; it would have been the same thing. So
All right. So enough of the Astros and that one. I'm
yeah,
pretty sure we're going to have many talks about them this year.
yeah,
But
there's a
let's just kind of
chance.
give a quick rundown. We want to make this a segment that we end on every week, and just kind of give our players of the week. We'll each give one hitter and one pitcher, and just kind of do a little, real brief overview of kind of their last week. So for my hitter, I am going with Fernando Tatis Jr. from the San Diego Padres. I think he just hit another home run today to tie for the lead in the major leagues with homers. He has 5 homers in this past week. Um, and his average, he's hitting 375
That would have been a
with
sixth. That would have been a sixth home run today of the week, right? Because
yeah, it would have been a
yeah,
sixth one.
the our
Yeah,
stats haven't updated for today's games because there's still a game
yeah.
going on.
This past week he only has a 308, which is batting average and balls in play, which pretty much takes out anything of a strikeout, a hit, a home run, kind of just whatever ball he hits into the field of play. It says he should have only hit 308 this week, and he hit 375.
Mhm.
So I mean, he's actually even got a little bit luckier because of those home runs. But I mean, he's been on fire this week.
Yeah, you look at a guy that he's put up in the wins above replacement column almost a full win above replacement this week, which is
Yeah.
crazy. So,
So who
um,
do you got?
yeah, so mine, I want to just kind of shine a light on somebody who people don't really talk about too much. I was going to talk about Max Kepler from the Twins. He had a really
Okay.
good week and 32 plate appearances. He had almost a 20% walk rate and a less than 10% strikeout rate this week, which is really really solid. He hit a 320, 438, 680 slash line, which is very very good. He had a 202 WRC plus, which is actually means that he has been twice as good as the average hitter in the big leagues. That stat, is a way to judge hitters based on the average hitter being 100. So he's been 102% better than the average hitter this week, and he's also done that while not being the luckiest guy. A 286 BABIP or the batting average on balls in play is pretty low. He's a guy that's probably going to typically run over a 300 batting average on balls in play. So, having a 320 average with that low of a batting average on balls in play means that his true what he could have done this week could have even been better than that with a little bit more luck. So this is a guy that on the Twins, he's been a good player for a while, good outfielder. That's been he's had a really good week and he's having a good year again. He's a good player. So
Well, now we're going to move on to our pitchers. And we got. I'm on my end. I'm going with a pretty obvious one. Trevor Bauer from the Reds. We kind of already hit. He threw a complete game shutout in one of his, which was a 7 innings, and his other one was a 6 inning, pretty dominant as well. I think he only gave up I think 1 run in that, which gives him a .69 nice ERA on the week. He's got a .6 WAR. He had a 13.5 K per nine this week, which kind of just means averages out to his strikeouts per 9 innings is over 13. A 2 walk rate, which you'd like to see that be a little bit lower, but with Trevor Bauer, I mean, his stuff is so good that he's going to get that sometimes. Um, but one of the stats, he had 100% left on base percentage,
I'm leaving a
which
lot of
means
guys on base.
he was leaving a lot of guys on base this week. So that's very good, getting out of those jams and stuff.
So mine for this week is going to be Dallas Keuchel. He had a really really good start for the White Sox. Pitched 7 innings, 1 walk, 8 strikeouts. That's a great outing for him. He's a guy that last year missed half the season with being holding out, not being signed in the off season. Then kind of had an up and down season with the Braves before signing with the White Sox in the off season. And I was not exactly expecting him to come out and have a great season, but that's a really good outing. He only gave up 1 run in that outing, so that's good for the White Sox because they've got a couple good pitchers, with Giolito and being so good, and this kind of gives them another guy that's um, how to having a good outing is. And Dallas Keuchel's a former Cy Young winner and a guy who's pitched extremely well, in multiple seasons, and has had 1 year where he wasn't great because in a shortened season last year. And it's good to see him have a really good season. And I also want to shout out real quick the Rockies pitchers. Herman Marquez and Antonio Senzatella have been really really good the past couple weeks, and that's that's a big deal because the Rock.
Oh, sounds like we lost Matt right there. Um, as he was hitting on, Herman Marquez and Antonio Senzatella, Colorado being a really tough place to hit. It's So definitely a
Can
shout out to those guys for those outings.
you hear me
And
again now?
yeah, we got you back now.
Okay, sorry about that. Yeah, both of those guys have had good outings the last couple weeks. So that's important for the Rockies because, like I said, they've never really had outside of a one-off season from a couple different guys, they've never really had great pitching. So that's important for them to have an outing like that from a couple guys. So
Well, alrighty, I think that will wrap it up for us this week.
yeah,
We'll be back next Sunday recording another episode, and just kind of hit on the other top stories for the weeks. Leave us your guys' players for the weeks, that you guys think, and
yeah,
we might bring some of your suggestions into our next episode.
yeah, that sounds good. We'll got a lot going on this week. A lot of good baseball to be played. Hopefully, we get to see the Cardinals return to the field. I know they've got their series against the Pirates seems to have been postponed, but maybe later in the week they'll be returning, and hopefully some of those Marlins players that have been out or have a good recovery. And the biggest thing though this week is I hope we don't see any more injuries because it's been a rough couple weeks to start the season injury wise. So
I hope we don't see any more injuries, and I hope we don't get any more COVID cancellations.
absolutely, absolutely.
Alrighty, we'll talk to you later, Matt.
All right, I'll talk to you, and everyone have a great week.
I'll see you guys.